This is Ian Shelton from Military Gun and Regional Justice Center, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have both Justin Pearson and Brian Amalfitano of Def Club. First up, we have Justin Pearson, who returns to the show, and we discuss Def Club and their upcoming new LP, We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness. We also discuss the recent documentary film about Justin called Don't Fall in Love with Yourself, The Locust, his band Satanic Planet, and a very interesting show they played at the Indiana State Capitol a while back. I'm very happy to have Justin back on the show. I think he's definitely one of the most interesting people I've spoken to on the pod, and just a very compelling person overall. If you haven't seen the documentary about him, Don't Fall in Love with Yourself, I highly recommend doing so. Seeing Justin's whole story, seeing Gabe Serbian, seeing Gabe's charisma come through the screen, hearing about Justin's past, hearing about all of his bands, was a really compelling experience for me. I love Justin, I love his bands, and he's got a really interesting story, so make sure you check it out. I also spoke to Brian Amalfitano, guitar player of Def Club, and we do a deep dive on the creative process of Def Club, the upcoming new LP. We talked about Brian's early life in Argentina, coming back to the US and discovering punk and The Locust back in the day, how he developed his sound, and how he ultimately linked up with Justin and started Def Club. I'm really happy to have Brian on the show as well. He's a super interesting guy, and this is a great episode. And that is all coming up shortly, but first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Death Wish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. Life in Parallel, the new album from Hundreds of AU, is out right now. You can pick it up on the Noise Cult variant or the Iodine Death Wish variant. Screamo meets post-hardcore that is chaotic and often epic in its delivery and arrangement. That's a quote from No Echo, and I think that about sums it up. It's one of my favorite records of the year, so definitely make sure you check it out. Iodine Recordings has a new Australian web store at imprintmerch.com.au. You can pick up all of the latest Iodine Recordings releases there, so make sure you go check it out. My band Memory Entry will be performing with Teardrops and The Promised End at Deep Cuts in Medford, Massachusetts. That's on Friday, September 26th, so if you're in the area, make sure you come out. Modern Life is War will be on tour in September and October. Make sure you check out their new LP, Life on the Moon. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. Also, say hello to our sponsor for the month of August, Evil Greed. In addition to their online store, Evil Greed offers tour merch, merch handling, and logistics services for tons of bands. They also offer merch and distribution solutions for bands and record labels in Europe and the UK. Evil Greed has a carefully selected roster of artists and labels in their online store. They offer very reasonable worldwide shipping rates, specifically to the UK and the USA. All right, let's find out what's going on this week at Evil Greed. We've got featured merch from Blood Incantation, Sun, Brutus, Spectral Wound, Bell Witch, Full of Hell. We've got featured music from Drain, a new 7-inch called Who's Having Fun, Military Gun, the new LP from Military Gun called God Save the Gun. We've got a 10-year 2X LP anniversary edition of Abyss by Chelsea Wolfe. We've got the new LP from AFI, Silver Bleeds the Black Sun. And we've got the upcoming LP from Fleshwater called 2000, In Search of the Endless Sky. There's a wide selection of new merch, new music, pre-orders. We've got Evil Greed exclusives, Once again, the new LP from Military Gun, God Save the Gun. We've got LPs from Sanction, Scowl, Counterparts, Thou, Have a Nice Life, Incendiary, Ways Away, Be Well, Chat Pile, you name it. Everything you could possibly want is up for sale at evilgreed.com. So head over to the website, sign up for the newsletter, and you can follow them on Instagram at evil_greed. Okay, so first up, we're going to speak to Justin Pearson, and right after that, we'll be speaking to Brian Amalfitano. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Justin Pearson. Justin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to come back. I don't know if you do that often, but I'm psyched.
Well, not super often, but often enough. But it's great to have you back here. It's been 3 years since you've been on the show. Can you believe it?
I can. It actually seems longer, but the time is not linear anymore at this juncture.
It is not. It does feel longer, and so much has happened in the last 3 years, and we'll talk about all of that, especially Def Club putting out a new LP. We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness, which I've heard the advance of. I love it. I can't wait for everybody else to hear it, and we'll talk about that and a lot more. But Justin, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
It's so funny. That's such a loaded question in this world right now, and like, I tend to, I mean, everybody asks it, like, even like at a grocery store, how you doing, whatever. So I always say decent. And it's funny because it kind of sets people up to actually question what, like the legitimacy of the question itself. But I would say decent because like, it could be way worse. It could be, and it's not that bad because I have all my limbs and my house wasn't bombed or whatever, so yeah, it's like not terrible.
Right. Yeah. There's so much horrible stuff going on in the world. And I was just talking about this with a friend recently. I'm afraid this is it. It's not like we're going to elect a new guy in 4 years and then everything is going to go back to like the shitty it was in 2010. I feel like things are really bad now and they're going to stay bad. And this is just like the new bad. Like, this is it. And I struggle with it. I see a lot of people juggling with it as well. Like, oh, I feel weird being happy about something, or, oh, I feel weird announcing something. But for me personally, I have to live my life because the things that I do save my life, keep me sane, keep me moving, and so I just have to keep going. How about you?
I feel the same. And I do feel a level of guilt at times. Like, I hate referencing social media, but it's like, hey, buy my record. And then, like the next thing is like someone in Gaza that's been like, had their children blown up or whatever. And you're just like, fuck, man. Or like, even here locally, like ICE, taking people, kidnapping people and sending them to another country. So like, I'm like, why do I bother with putting out records? But it's really strange because, so I also have a podcast, and I it's not the episode that I'm going to reference isn't out yet, but I had, the writer Chuck Tingle on there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chuck Tingle, but his like sort of statement piece or whatever is he's just it's hard to like, I guess like he's very positive, and it's like he's very much into saying like love like is real. And so like I was saying, how are you positive? Like, I feel like I just spew out negative shit all the time as a reaction, like a social political reaction or something. But he was saying that like, even if you're like, he's a writer. So he was saying like, if you're in the vocal booth, like recording something that seems inherently negative lyrics or whatever, they're not negative in the sense that you're just being a dick or whatever. You're kind of like saying a situation, and you're doing it out of love because something like an injustice or some sort of oppression or an issue that's harming people is happening. So you're speaking out against it. Therefore, it is a positive, loving thing. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I do think that, and not to give artists credit or whatever overall, but I think that if you're addressing certain things, social issues or whatever it is, I think maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm headed with this. I'm torn between like what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Do you address social issues and things going on directly in your music, or, when you're speaking between songs?
Yes. The thing that I realized, I think over time was when I first started playing music when I was 15, I was in a band called Struggle, and it was very overtly political. And it was also, I realized that it was a little off-putting to people that maybe were already on the same side of the spectrum politically. And I think it was just a lot of like extra, I don't know what the right word is. Like, I felt like people were exhausted. And so it's kind of like if I go to a show and I hear a band saying all of the things that I agree with, I'm fine with that. But I think a lot of people might not be. And I've tried to figure out a nuance on how to communicate with people without being, I don't know, overwhelming. And not that I want to like vanilla it or water it down or something, but I think that like using subversiveness and humor are really good keys to saying something that might not necessarily be what everyone wants to like get into. You know, like someone's listening to music or going to a show to have fun, and let's say I'll use fun in air quotes. You don't really want to be like reminded or bombarded or, you know, I don't know, whatever the right word is, like of all of these like negative kind of shitty things that are happening. So a few things, like for me musically, when I'm playing a show, I try not to speak much, and I try to speak only at certain times. But that also is like a performance thing where I think that I'm a big fan of playing song after song after song after song, then taking a break, and then song after song because it does, I want to make it like a performance and have it be interesting, and I want there to be some sort of momentum, I guess, from start to finish. But I think that there's a nuance, and I'll try to say something relevant and keep it kind of dialed in, hopefully, to a certain topic. I've seen tons of bands in the past kind of like spew this, like anti-capitalist, whatever kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh, you're part of that system though, and it's kind of weird. So I feel like if you just sort of say your piece and cut out, it's more impactful. I don't know if I should keep ranting on that, but I like in my brain, the Locust toured with, there's this idea, the Locust toured with this band, International Noise Conspiracy, and they're fine on their own, but they were very like political, and they were like, every song was like, we're against this and this and that. And like, they had a lot of, lecturing or communicating happening. Well, not communicating, because I feel like communicating is like two ways. So it was like every song they were saying something. And I thought like, oh, it's very interesting because we're the support band and we're getting paid much less. And we're, I'm not like complaining, but I get the place we were at. But I thought like we could say all of the things, or we could just come out and say, so this is like during one of the many U.S. wars in Iraq. So we just came out saying like, we do not support the U.S. war in Iraq. Bam, we would play for 30 minutes and we cut out. And I think in my brain, it seemed more impactful. It's had this like element of just severity, and it was a bit more, it felt kind of, and I don't want to suck my own dick here, but it felt kind of righteous. You're just like, fuck this, boom, here's our music, we're done. Because yeah, everyone's like on the same page for the most part. So do they need to have the lectures about injustices? Yeah, I guess. But at the same time, I don't know if it's like the right place necessarily. Yeah, it's complicated, I suppose.
Yeah. And there is a fine line, which I think you're talking about. There, I don't know. It depends on the situation, but there's a right way to do it. The band No Man, the singer Meha is Palestinian, and I saw them. And I think towards the end of the set, she talked about her personal experience and things her family has gone through and things that Palestinian people are going through. It brought me to near tears. And I don't know everyone involved. I don't know the full scope of the situation to the level she does, but I felt it because it was real. So I think there's a part of us that can sense whether it's someone just saying something or something someone actually believes.
I think that's a really important part, very important point. Like, for instance, I would want to hear that, and I would want to have that shared connection with that person on stage as an audience member, like to absorb that. I think that saying like over and over, just saying like a blanket statement like Free Palestine is fine and does a point. It does serve a point, but it eventually you kind of become used to it and it doesn't seem as impactful. And I think that as artists, maybe we need to find a way to make more of an impact, because clearly that, okay, like the topic of Gaza and Palestine, we're dealing with the genocide. So like, do we keep saying like free Palestine and like leaving it at that? Or do we try to get more in depth and actually say something or create something if you have that platform to speak?
Right. You still live in San Diego?
I do, yes.
How long have you been in your current place now?
My house, I don't know, 7, 8 years maybe.
So you own a home?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to ask, is like rent price killing you? Because things are hard to afford everywhere for everyone, it seems, myself included. Have you felt that as well lately?
Completely. And the crazy thing is like the mortgage. So fuck, I have nothing, and I have nothing still, but I have equity in this house. But like, I think that I've figured out ways to navigate. So like, for instance, there used to be this thing here in San Diego or in Southern California, or I guess in California, where you could call it stated income, and you could just say you make a certain amount of money. It seemed a little. This is before the first housing crisis or housing bubble that happened here, and you could say you make this much money, and they would give you a loan based on that, so you could own property. It seems like a terrible idea, and it might have been for a lot of people, but for me, I was able to. And at the time, a lot of the stuff I was doing was like cash based. So like on paper, it looked like I didn't make much anyhow, but I knew I could make enough money to pay my mortgage. And the thing is, I'm also like fairly responsible, but the thing is like a mortgage in San Diego right now is about half the price of rent. So that's kind of fucked up in itself on so many levels, not even like addressing things like redlining or different elements of like class and, injustices. But I think that if somehow people could have the means to obtain property, then I feel like maybe there would be not only a better sense of your living situation, but also it builds a different community and so on and so forth. So that's probably not warranted for me to say all that, but I feel like it's a relevant thing to talk about, especially since I brought up like capitalism and things like that.
Right. You live with your partner?
Yes.
How long?
10 years, I guess. 10, yeah. 9, 10.
Is it hard for you ever? I'm curious because I'm newly in a relationship again after a long time. So I'm curious about other people's perspectives.
I think everything is hard for everybody. It's just the nuance and how you navigate and how you communicate with someone or everyone, I mean, that's an important thing too. I think that, fuck, man, you keep throwing all these like very complicated scenarios or topics, but like, yes, it's hard. But I also think like whatever isn't hard, I guess like whatever is hard and you're doing it, there's meaning in it. I don't want to say value because that seems kind of like a weird thing, but there's like, if it's worth it, then you're going to deal with it and you're going to make it work. And I think that's an important thing to learn. I mean, I'm 49, so I'm still learning things, but I feel like a little bit more wise at this point where, and yeah, I still have a lot to learn, but I think that figuring out ways to deal with people on a relationship level or even like band stuff, which is also kind of complicated always. So figuring out a way to coexist and navigate in harmony and find common interest and shared interest and do it in a loving and happy way is essentially hard for everybody. But at some points in time, people, I guess, luck out, and they figure out a way to do it. Right.
Yeah. And it is difficult, but some of the most rewarding things as well. I've had my struggles in my relationship with, I don't know, just learning to communicate effectively and putting pride aside and all that. And same thing in bands, Sometimes there can be creative differences or communication struggles, but if you can learn to do it and learn to do it effectively, it's some of the best things happen. Long-term loving relationships, incredible bands putting out incredible records. I mean, I'd rather do that than sit home by myself all the time, pumping out content.
Yeah. I mean, for me, luckily enough, like my partner is also very creative. And so a lot of times our creative outlets overlap or adjacent to each other to where we kind of can work together on things. And that is also really interesting too, because I feel like maybe I've had good and bad experiences with dealing with bands and stuff like that on an artistic level. So like I kind of know how to, how to do those kind of things at times, be it like a, whatever, like collaborative artist work on, So I think I think I feel very lucky in that sense, especially too, where like I can be inspired by someone else's creative mind. I think that's cool. And also might be something that certain relationships lack.
Yes, Becky has been kind enough to let us use her photos from time to time for the podcast. So shout
Yeah.
out Becky, amazing photographer.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And also too, like as a photographer, I think that she struggles and goes through very similar things that musicians go through. So again, like it's just a different medium, I think, of art. And so I feel like, oh yeah, you're seeing this thing happening or you're dealing with this thing. And I'm like, I can completely relate to that. So that also helps, I suppose, where like if your partner works, in an industry that you have no concept of, or you don't share an interest in, I think that might be a little bit more difficult.
Before I went to bed last night, I watched your documentary with my girlfriend, Don't Fall in Love with Yourself, which was amazing. And it was just, because I remember talking to you before, but seeing the documentary and seeing the faces and seeing the live footage and everything just gave it everything a lot more depth. And I watched the documentary, and then I knew I was talking to you today. So I had a dream that, all right, you were doing like a presentation at a college, right? So, but you didn't have time to do this interview too. So you were like, oh, you can just like stream the presentation at the college because I don't have time to do both. And I was like, okay. And I was like, he's busy. That's the best we can do. And then I woke up and I was like, okay, that wasn't real. That was good. Anyway, all of that aside, great documentary. When did the idea come up? Who pitched it? Like, how did it all come about?
Well, the director, John Nix, came up with it and presented it to me. And I did not have, like, people kind of, I think maybe have a misperception and think that like I helped do it. And I had a say in it, but it wasn't me. And I wasn't like, hey, I want a movie about myself. I mean, I'm kind of up for like almost anything. And so John Nix was a friend of mine, and he was like, hey, I want to make this documentary about you. And I was like, sure, whatever. Not like, sure, whatever, I don't give a fuck. But I was like, oh yeah, like I didn't know the level of talent that he had as a filmmaker. And also I didn't know what the outcome would be or that it would even see the light of day. I kind of was just like, sure, whatever, let's just do whatever you want. That's fine. Maybe it'll be cool. And if not, I'm sure I'll learn something from it. And then it kind of took a long time, but once it came out, I started realizing a lot of stuff because I mean, if you were to ask me about music, I probably would have a lot more to say about it. But if you're asking me about film, I felt like maybe my perception of it is one dimensional. So I specifically went to a Oak Cliff Film Festival, where it premiered in Dallas a couple years ago, and it was interesting to do a Q&A afterwards because there was a lot of people in the audience that had no concept of the stuff that I did musically or whatever, and so it was interesting to have their take on it as a film and as John being a storyteller, and not having it be someone that was like, oh yeah, I'm totally into The Locust, I get it or whatever. So and the really like striking thing was this woman stood up and said, I have no concept of punk, and I am a devout Christian, and all. I was just like, fuck, this lady's got like zero connection to what I am about and like what she just watched. And so she offered her opinion on the film, and it was very eye-opening to hear someone kind of speak in a sense coming from from a cinematographic sense than if like she was someone that was like aware of what punk was. So it was really an eye-opening experience. And then, I am grateful for anybody caring or having interest in what I do. I am so grateful that John was able to do something that was not, I don't think was like something that I would call cringeworthy. I was really concerned that it would make it out to be something that I wouldn't feel comfortable being portrayed as. And not that I want it to be false, but like there's certain things where I feel like a little bit like certain other shorts or docs about artists or musicians, and I feel like it's a little I don't know what the right word is, just kind of kind of tacky, and I didn't want to make myself out to be something that I'm not, or have more value than I do, because at the end of the day I was like, I'm still broke, I'm still on EBT, like I still fucking hate cops, like it's the same old shit, like life's kind of weird or whatever. So my point was, I think John did a great job. My only real criticism is that I think that John should do a follow-up about Gabe Serbian, who had passed away before the film was released, and I really love him in the film and his parts. I think that they're just so outstanding. I really wish the documentary was about him.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me while I was watching it, because I had never seen The Locust live. So, seeing how he came into the band and just watching him drum was unbelievable. And all the puking after sets was just unbelievable. He was just really charismatic. So I was thinking about you, and I was like, oh man, it must have been tough for you to watch this after he passed, and he's there,
Yeah, it was there. There's a lot of times where I would try to like kind of fight back tears, because I miss him like every day. But it was but I watching it like in a theater with other people or something was very interesting to me, to like see his charisma translate onto the screen and into these other people's brains. I thought that was really impactful, and it made me feel good. It made me feel like, oh, Gabe's essence is sort of living on now, because he was a genius, and he not only musically but just personally as a human being, and so I think that it was cool to see that, to see people laugh, and also to see people cry or have like sadness for him passing, because the post credit scene is pretty jarring, I suppose, and especially after you just watch the film and you're kind of like, oh, that guy's so awesome, and then you're like, whoa, he passed away, and so that it feels fucked up. But yeah, the whole thing. I mean, we can't change the trajectory of human life, and he's gone. I'm glad that film came out with him in it. I think his parts are just sheer genius. Yeah.
While watching the documentary, I was reminded of all the shit that the Locust dealt with at your shows. There's that scene where I guess a woman threw a beer at you, and you're like, I don't want a beer thrown at me. What if I dumped a beer on your head? Would you be happy about that? And that I can certainly understand, because I don't drink anymore. I don't want alcohol thrown on me, and a million other things the band dealt with while you're in it, while you're touring, while you're dealing with all of this. Do you remember your thought process at the time? Like, why is this happening? Or why do we have to deal with this? Or did you ever think like, I don't want to do this anymore if we have to keep dealing with this? Do you remember any of your thought process at the time?
Well, the sort of negative aspects that followed the Locust, also Some Girls, maybe some other bands too, like over the years, it varied, so there was times where sort of that element of tension or irritation that you're causing with almost effortlessness, is interesting to reflect on. But at the time, when you're in it, you're kind of just like, I gotta get out of this without getting injured, or a lot of times it was like, I got to get out of this without like more financial injury, because someone like slashing your tires is detrimental on a band, because like not only do tires cost a lot, but like you might miss your next show. So there's things like that. But like the few times that I've broken bones and stuff, it's been kind of like, fuck, man, someone broke my rib or my whatever clavicle, whatever this part's called right up here, like just certain things. I'm like, oh, this sucks. I don't have insurance or something. So it usually falls on like a financial side of like being a bummer. But it's interesting to think about it when you're like, hey, I did nothing except play music, and people want to kill us. Like that seems like a very strange accomplishment that I don't think a lot of people can't do that. Like, it's one thing if you're, Gigi Allen and you're taking a shit and throwing it at someone, you're probably gonna get beat up,
Right.
But like, we would just show up and play music, and people would fuck with us and want to kill us, and like that's an interesting thing to think about. and to realize that you've accomplished something of that magnitude is pretty special in itself. So I don't know. It is tiring at times. But I think, to be honest, the thing that's more tiring for me is when you're performing and there's an audience that's indifferent. Because I think if they're reacting, even if it's negative, you're accomplishing something. And as long as you can get out of there alive and not too hurt, I think you've been successful. And I think a lot of that negative stuff that followed the Locust actually helped promote the band, and it kind of made this like strange. I don't know if like the word folklore is right, but people thought it was like this crazy thing, and that we were causing all this like, all this agitation and hardcore or whatever, or punk. And it was like we were just playing music and people were fucking losing their shit and wanted to like, harm us in different ways. And so also too, I will look back at it and be like, it's not that hard, and you guys were very unsuccessful with getting to us physically. Like it is kind of interesting to think about that, because I not that I would want to go do that to someone, but if I wanted to fuck someone up, I could. And I'm not trying to say that like in a macho way. I'm trying to say that like I'm smart and I know how to like ruin someone's shit. And I feel like no one ever really was able to do that. I mean, there were times when there was like full bottles of beer getting thrown at us, and that shit hurts when you get hit by it.
Yeah.
And yes, but like if someone's going to try to stop you in some other weird way, like slash your tires, and they only slash one, I think that's pretty silly, because usually a vehicle has a spare and then you're back on the road. I think if I was going to slash someone's tires, I would get all four, it takes like or at least two, and it only takes a second more, and then you kind of like done a bit more damage. So I think that like there's just a level of depth that people should try to apply to things. If they're that bent out of shape, then I'm going to criticize it. their lack of success, I suppose.
Did that kind of stuff continue until the band went on hiatus, or was there ever a point where it like settled down?
Yeah, there was a point, and it was really strange, because what would happen was, so people would kind of come out and talk shit about us, and we would be, for the most part, I feel like we were like you couldn't really heckle us without us kind of talking more creative shit back, and that would cause like this almost like comedy aspect, where it's like people would talk shit and then we would kind of like berate them from the stage, and then the audience would laugh at them, and it would be like a thing. And I think that would actually instigate them to kind of go like, well, fuck these people for making fun of me. I'm gonna try to like do damage to their existence or whatever. So at some point we were like, we got to make it to where it's impossible for people to communicate with us. And so that was where we bridged all of our music together. And it came out of writing the album Safety Second Body Last, which was like a 10-minute piece that had no breaks, no sonic breaks. So then we were like, oh, well, that works. Let's just make the whole set, like if we're playing for 40 minutes, just make it from start to finish with no dialogue, except maybe a little bit at the beginning or the end saying thank you or whatever, but have like absolutely no chance for someone to communicate with us. And that I think might have cut out all of the bullshit, because there was no way for them to have a conversation with us. And then therefore we would not have to berate someone and make them feel terrible or stupid. And then there was no more violence. So, yeah, I mean, but I have experienced a lot of violence since then, usually from, the police or like border patrol, like if we're crossing from Canada back into the US or stuff like that, or like at a truck stop with some fucking bigot or whatever. So, but it's not really necessarily related to the show or the band itself. So
I also respect the choice when you went to record Plague Soundscapes. It could have been on Epitaph, right? But you that was not the right fit for the band. So you went with the subsidiary as well, because there were some more artists on that label that were more your vibe.
Yes. Well, that was a lot of like back and forth, because we all really love Brett Gurewitz so much. And I still think he's such a brilliant person. I really love him so much. And like getting to work with Anti, which I'll admit it's Epitaph, was a pleasure. And it was probably, I think, one of the most enjoyable record labels I've dealt with. And I think that was fantastic. So yeah, but it was like a weird time, because even announcing Plague Soundscapes on Anti, we immediately got shit on by people this is like the era of chat rooms or message boards or whatever. So like everyone was kind of just trashing us and just absurd, stupid shit, like saying we were going to become a pop punk band and that we sold out. And to our knowledge, we were going to write the best record we could up to that point, and yeah, there was a lot of shit talking. And then it was really interesting because as soon as our record came out, then Dillinger Escape Plan did that record with Mike Patton on Epitaph Proper, and then Converge did a record on Epitaph Proper. And I really wonder if they got shit on.
Yeah, you cited that in the documentary. I don't remember anyone saying anything bad about Converge signing to Epitaph. I mean, maybe they did, maybe on some message board somewhere, but I don't remember any flack or any like fuck these guys or anything like that.
There was quite a lot of it for us, and it was it was fine. It was like, oh, at least we got your attention, and I think that says something in itself. But the weird, well, there's a lot of weird things, but I don't know, because for me, I ended up working with Epitaph Proper later with Some Girls and then with Retox, and there was never any criticism whatsoever. But I do wonder if there's like this sort of like DIY holier than thou element that people were just thinking that like Epitaph was this terrible thing that existed. And for us, we vetted them. We vetted Brett a lot more than we should have. And I think it was just an interesting way to play it out. But I'm grateful that we did multiple records with them. I think it's a great label.
Yeah. When does Def Club get started? How long ago? What's going on in your life? How does everyone come together? Tell us about it.
I don't know about how long ago, to be honest, but I had done this. I had worked on this film score project with Nick Zinner called More Pain, and it was for this movie that never came out. But I was told that it was about these witches, these witches that surfed or something like that. So we wrote some music, and then it at one point I just we released it. It was a minute and a half worth of music. It's not much. He played all the music, I sang, and it's it's like it's quintessential thrash music or whatever. So and it was fun, and I love Nick so much, and it was cool to do that. But it got a lot of attention, and so I was like, hey, we should, or somehow we like said, oh yeah, maybe we should put this band together and do something. And so I started kind of trying to put a band together for that, and two things happened. Nick was like, I'm very busy. Maybe this isn't the right time. And then the other thing was, I was like, yeah, this probably isn't the right time because also it's a minute and a half worth of music. Maybe we should just like move on from this idea. And so we did. And, but I had like started kind of putting a couple people together and that became a band, which was Def Club. So yeah, Brian and Scott, were the two people I wrangled and they were willing to put up with me, and we started writing music. And so also the start of Def Club was a little bit more one-dimensional, sort of like grind thrash music, and now it's kind of taking form to something else. What that is, I don't know, but yeah, it just took a minute to get to that point.
Yeah, so you're a solo vocalist in this band. Do you write riffs at all? Do you contribute musically?
I don't write riffs as in like sitting down with my bass and being like, play this, guys. But awesomely enough, everybody in Def Club is very unattached to the riffs, and they don't have a whole lot of musical ego, which is such a pleasure to deal with. And same with me, because Brian fucking runs me through the ringer with vocals and lyrics and stuff. But at the same time, like, I think it's cool to be able to be opinionated about everyone's contribution to a communal thing that you're working on. So yeah, I don't sit down and play riffs and stuff, but I will say like, hey, you should play this in a different key, or maybe play this twice as long, or don't play that at all, or whatever. And then, they'll tell me like, these lyrics are dumb, or you should sing here and not there, and things like that. So it is a pain in the ass, but I think the payoff is definitely there.
Yeah. Is it ever difficult for you to hear like, try this, don't do that, or maybe you had an idea and it wasn't well received, or maybe you have a vibe for the song that you want to push?
Yeah. So this probably goes back to that like relationship topic too, because a lot of times I'm like, fuck these people, or fuck one of these people for sure. And like, I don't want to ever deal with them again. But yes, the thing that I think, and this also too might apply to relationships in general, is like one person's going, I'm envisioning this like this, and then they say it, and I'm like, hey, my brain doesn't work like that. I don't understand that. I don't understand how to sing. I don't know, whatever. Like if I'm singing on the one and they're like, you should sing on the two or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like my brain only works this one way. So, and I mean, I get it, but I don't know how to do it. So those are like things that I feel, because it's very easy for me to say like, play that in a different key, do this drum beat, blah, 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 whatever, sing in the drum beat, do this thing. And then they have to like actually physically do it. So like for another instrument to be like, why don't you just sing this here? Or why don't you just say this? Or you need to change this thing. And I'm like, hey, we're missing syllables now. Like I can't just interject syllables. So our brains are wired differently. So a lot of times there is sort of a disconnect with a suggestion. And I try really hard, and I'm sure I fuck up, and I'm sure they all try really hard too, to kind of consider that, because our brains are geared towards certain things. But again, at the end of the day, it's like, I want to walk out of that rehearsal space or that recording studio or off that stage and like love my bandmates. And I think that's something that kind of like going back to the relationship thing, like when it's hard and you get through it, the payoff is great. And I think that's definitely something that Def Club or the Locust or almost all the projects I've done really does have that.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be difficult sometimes, but again, if you can push through it and speak the same language and get it on the same page, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. And it's nice because I've dealt with people that are not willing to collaborate or listen to your constructive criticism. And I think that's a bummer for that person and for that project. And I think there's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah. Has there been a situation, let's say you're in a band, all right, historically, you've been in many bands. Has there been a situation where you're like, or someone is like, I want to do this, and the person is just like, no. Like, what do you do? Do you drop the song? Do you just move on? Do you concede to what they want to do? Have you ever been faced with that kind of situation?
Yeah. I mean, I've been faced with a lot of different kinds of situations that amount to not working out. So I'm trying to think of like, without ratting someone out and making it awkward if someone was to hear this, but there's times where someone's like, or I'm saying, here's my idea, and everyone's against it. Yeah. I mean, you just kind of move on. And also, if I have an idea that doesn't really resonate with people, I'll still have that idea in my brain, and I can apply that later to the same project or to a different project, or I don't know, kind of move on from it, because something else will happen that's, essentially magical or whatever, musically magical. You're just like, oh, this other thing is fucking cool as well. Let's just focus on that. And that's great. So again, like maybe it comes back to like not being super attached to your own ideas and what you feel is right in your brain, and kind of being open towards it, towards a more communal approach to it. I think that's a really important thing. And fuck, man, maybe like that could be applied to politics for sure. Definitely to American politics. If people could be a little bit more conscious of like a more communal aspect, maybe we'd have a better outcome. So
yes, that's something I say all the time, because people get it so wrong. They love to point the finger at each other instead of pointing the finger at the 10 guys running everything, ruining everything. Everyone is so quick to be like, you're a Republican, I hate you. You're a Democrat, I hate you. Or me being far left, being like, I hate both of you. But I try to find the good in all people, no matter who they are, because there's more of us than them. And if we were united, things could work out a lot better.
I mean, there's that saying, like when you're pointing your finger at someone, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. And so I think that's like a thing to kind of consider. There's been so many times in my life, maybe not musically, a couple of times musically, actually. I mean, I guess I could explain that, but also just like in life, where I'm like, I'm dealing with this person, and we have like major things not in common, and we're still somehow like able to function. And that, I think that's kind of cool. I recently wrote this book called Gigi Alien and the Mystery Meat, and one of the main people in the book is this gay minister, and him and I had such a strange friendship, because I was like, well, I'm a straight atheist, so we don't really have a whole lot in common. And he actually taught me so many things. I don't know if I taught him stuff. I guess I would like to think I did, but he definitely taught me a lot of stuff that I don't think I would have learned if I didn't, interact with him and become friends or whatever. So yeah, someone that's far away from what you are and what you identify is can offer you insight, I think, to all kinds of shit.
You just reminded me, your band Satanic Planet features Lucien Greaves, the Satanic Temple co-founder and spokesperson. How did you link up with him?
Well, he had been on someone's podcast, and he had mentioned, or he did an interview or something, and he had mentioned spooky bands, and he listed Dead Cross, and I was like, holy shit. And I had just seen that movie Hail Satan, and so I was like, oh man, that movie was incredible, and that guy's great. And I was like, he gave a shout out to Dead Cross. That's so cool. So I just reached out and I was like, hey, I have a podcast, would you want to be on it? And he was like, sure. So we had him on our podcast, Luke Henshaw and I, and we had him on our podcast, and we had an idea, because so Luke and I have this band called Planet B, and we had this loose idea to do a record that was like Planet B featuring Lucien Greaves, kind of like a satanic mass. So we'd kind of play like this background music, and then he would have these lectures or these vocal pieces go over it. And so we pitched that idea to him, and then it kind of morphed into an actual band. And so, yeah, it's been very weird in a great way, working with him, and also like frightening at times for reasons that are like, you people think like, oh, it's scary being in a satanic band. I'm like, no, it's scary being in a band with that guy that people are trying to blow up, and shoot or kill or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, that's the scary part. So
yeah, I was curious about that, because I'm like, there's got to be people who are really mad at him. There's a lot of Christian and other religious angry types in this country who would do something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, like set the temple on fire, or try to blow it up and shit like that. Yeah, and then we did a performance at the Indiana State Capitol, and there was a decent amount of protesters there, right? Like Christian fascists, right-wing Christian fascists, and then it was very jarring because the majority of them were wearing camouflage material, garb, and they seemed like, militia style, yelling shit at us. And I was pretty sure that there was going to be like legitimate violence. Even so much that like when we were setting up, Luke Henshaw was like, I'm setting up behind you because if someone shoots at us, they're going to shoot Lucien first. And so I was like, oh, interesting. And I think Lucien takes precaution, has to wear like a bulletproof vest or something, but we don't. So it was an interesting situation to be in. With that being said, I think all the shit I've gone through with the Locust kind of primed me for that. I'm like, I kind of felt a little bit at ease, being like, oh, whatever,
It's just another
the worst that can happen is I'll die,
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's like, here you are again, protesters and people angry at you at a show.
Well, it's kind of interesting to think about, like, I don't know, what do you want to call hardcore punk, hardcore, like just shit heads, and then like real Christian fascists coming and protesting in the name of God. That there is a frightening level associated with that, and I mean, yeah, I guess like a lot of hardcore dudes would wear like camouflage shorts or something, but this is something different where it's like, these people, it was pretty jarring, and the fact that we're like in the state capitol and there's like, state capitol police there as well. Like it just felt, extremely uncomfortable, in so many different ways. And that's not even like touching upon like the musical aspect of it, because we weren't sure if we were allowed to have amps, and like we like got cello players. The whole thing was strange for us musically, but then there was like, here, go do this strange thing that's probably odd feeling to do musically, and then we're gonna just like throw all these other elements of like, you could probably die, and see how you do. So yeah, it was interesting.
Was the actual show at the state capitol?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Like, how does a band with a satanic leader end up playing at the state capitol?
Well, that would be religious freedom, I suppose, because Christian nationalist Sean Foyt has been doing this round, like the rounds of performing at state capitals. So if a state capitol allows him to perform, that opens the door to all religions to be able to perform. So since the Satanic Temple is recognized as a legitimate religion, and Lucien heads the congregation there, I think we were able to do it on those grounds, those legal grounds. And luckily, TST has the ability to navigate a situation like that, the legal ramifications of it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever. But it's funny because when they asked if we wanted to do it, I was like, oh yeah, sure, good, sure, like thinking like, good luck. There's no fucking way. And then all of a sudden he's like, all right, it's on. I'm like, holy shit, why did I agree to this? And then so it was even like when we went to load in, then it was like a whole other level of like going underground and going through these tunnels to get into in there. Like I was like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? This is crazy. It was definitely one of the most bizarre things I've done in my life, for sure.
Yeah, I love that it could actually happen, because I would just think like, oh, religious politicians would just never let it happen, even though legally it should.
You're right, but I think like there's not a whole lot of like musical acts that are associated with a religious entity where they could do that, aside from Christians, which doesn't seem that weird that he performed in these state capitals. It seems kind of like normal, I guess. So yeah, the fact that a satanic band did it seems pretty bizarre. I'm glad that we were part of that. I'm glad we did it. I'm hoping that we do more of them. But again, the more we do, that's just that many more chances of them killing us or killing one of us.
You don't need any more of that. Dead Cross, an excellent band, which I had not heard previously, but I had Dave Lombardo on the show, and then I discovered it, and I was like, wow, there's just endless good bands out there to discover. When you're playing in a Dead Cross with the Mike Pattons and Dave Lombardos of the world, is that intimidating at all? Because look, I'd be intimidated playing with anyone new, because I work a certain way. Maybe it doesn't jive with certain people. I've done audition type deals where it hasn't gone well. But if you put Dave Lombardo, who was previously with Slayer, on top of that, and Mike Patton, who from Faith No More and a million other great bands, it adds a whole other pressure to it in my mind. How is it for you?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like maybe it would have been one thing if someone's like, all right, here's the band, you're doing this right now. But like there was like this sort of ease or gracefulness into dealing with both of them. So I had met Patton. I don't know when I had met him, but I met him somehow, and he ended up releasing a Locust record. And then the Locust toured with Phantomas. So I had met Patton, I'd been on tour with Patton and Dave, with Patton and Lombardo. And so I feel like I was already friends with them. And then I worked on a recording project with Lombardo, which was like kind of what started Dead Cross, because we were in the studio together working on some stuff. As me and Mike Crane and Dave Lombardo working on someone else's recording project. And then we decided to start another band. And in that version of Dead Cross, Gabe Serbian was the singer. So and we had played a handful of shows with that lineup. So it was pretty crazy. Like the first time I was on stage with Dave, I was like, first of all, we played the Casbah. It's a small venue in San Diego. His drum set's massive. And I was like, this is fucking crazy that this giant drum set's on this little stage. But it was, it was cool. It felt rad. But we had already been like, recording and working on stuff and writing and doing all these things. So it didn't seem that bizarre. And then Gabe left the band, and Patton said he would join. And so we recorded his vocals and did some rehearsals. And again, it was kind of weird to look over and be like, oh, well, I'm on stage with Patton now. And where that but I'd already done, I've already been on tour and hung out with them and stuff like that. So it didn't seem that weird. The weird shit is to me is like Dead Cross being on tour. And then they're like, hey, we're going to do a cover of Nazi Punk's Fuck Off with Jello singing. And there's no preparation. And I know Jello a little bit, but there's no preparation. It's like sound check with Jello and then the fucking show with Jello. And that is a thing where you kind of look over and you're like, this is weird in a great way. But you're like 2 hours ago, I had not shared a stage with this person. And now here we are, so the sort of like the quickness of that happening was a bit jarring, but again, like I feel grateful that I got to work with anybody, like, I mean, yes, there's legacy in what Lombardo and Patton have done, but I also think there's legacy in what all of my friends have done. And I think I think it's cool to kind of put them all in the same, on the same plateau, of artists or whatever. Like they all are creative and relevant and so on and so forth.
That's a good point, because I can be quick to discredit things I've done, past or present, or say, oh, it's not on this level. But no, it is. It is. Everything that we're doing, everything that we're contributing is important.
I agree. And also too, like, when Dave's a good example, because Dave was always very, I hope I say the right words, but he was always like enamored with Gabe Serbian as a drummer and also as a person. And so it was cool to kind of have that shared mutual respect between the two be secular, so then like same with Patton, like he was obviously a fan of the Locust and stuff. So it wasn't like I was like some schlub, working with these people or like a hired gun or whatever. Like we had already shared our appreciation for each other's work, and so I think that goes the same, because there's other people that like don't have a lot of recognition that I've worked with, and those people are fucking fascinating, on so many levels. So I just, I think like I see the relevance of like addressing someone like those two guys in Dead Cross, but I also see the relevance of addressing anybody, I mean, even Lucien Greaves is a great example, because yes, he's very popular and does a lot of really insane stuff, like as far as his activism, but like as a lyricist myself, going into the studio with him and like watching him create lyrics in real time, I'm like, this is shit I can't do. I'm like, this is insane. I was like, you literally just wrote that right now. Like that's fucked. Like that's fucked up for me. Like, I can't believe you're able to do that, so it's interesting to like kind of see those elements with people that maybe wouldn't be recognized, and they're with the craft that they're able to conduct.
Yeah, and it's just one big community. Things circle back around in ways you might not expect. I mean, you ended up putting out the first Venom Morris record, right, with Dave and his wife?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's cool too. And really is kind of, that's an interesting thing too, because that might go to like a bigger picture where I had gone to see Testament play. I think it was Testament. And Paula, his wife, was there, and they were talking, and they're like, yeah, we have this record, and nobody seems to like really want to take the chance on putting it out. And I said, well, I'll just put it out, because they were going to do it themselves. And I was like, well, at least let 31G put it out. That's better than you doing it yourself. And they were like, what? Like, that's crazy. And they just thought like 31G was too weird, or thought we were too cool or something. And I was like, no, it totally makes sense, because you guys are family. And I think that's like really, really what's most important. And so like it came out, and then the next record came out on Ipecac, and they seem very successful, and they seem like they're finding their groove as a band, and I again, like I love them as people, and I think their music and their output is it's awesome. It doesn't sound like Stress Positions or Fuck Money or something, but it sounds like Venom Morris, and I don't want everything to sound the same. And I think that also goes back to like saying a lot about 31G, because 31G can put out, I don't know. I always reference Cavalry Decapitation and Quintronimus Pussycat, and it like that makes sense to me. Probably to their own individual scenes, maybe it makes no sense, but yeah, I feel like it's just all of my friends and family under one umbrella. So.
Right. We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness is the new LP from Def Club. It is coming. I have heard it. I highly recommend everybody check it out. I really do like the band. When did we start writing? When did we start putting together this LP?
Man, I wish I had dates and stuff, because everything seems so bizarre to me. I don't know, because we had a handful of tracks, and we had not enough for an album, but we like haphazardly like went into the studio to record, and it all kind of came together. And I think in a bizarre way, but it's been, it's been a couple years working on it. And I think, just kind of coming out of like the pandemic, trying to reevaluate life and touring and things of that nature took a minute. And then we just sort of, started working towards an LP. And I mean, even beyond that, I feel like, we've rehearsed and wrote new material, nothing substantial, but it's kind of like just kind of keep going in a upward fashion, I suppose. So yeah, it took a minute, and a lot of like, I think we're at the point to where we also had a lineup change from our previous album where we had 2 guitar players. Now we have 1, and I thought that would be a negative thing, but it turned out to be a positive because there's a little bit more space, and you can kind of hear bass lines, which I am a big fan of, and you could hear a lot of the nuances and some of the guitar stuff that Brian does, which is absurd with all of the pedals. So I think it just took a minute longer to kind of facilitate what we wanted to do to ourselves. So yeah.
How often do you guys get together? Is it like an every week practice thing, or do we get together when we need to write? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's definitely fragmented because some of us play in other projects, and also we live in 2 different cities. So there's always an issue with that stuff. So kind of like now, or for the most part, it's like, oh, we have to get together to rehearse for a show. But then there's times where like, hey, we really should just get together and write because we've been like playing the same shit for way too long. So those are the kind of the things that will happen. In a perfect world, we'd all live close to each other and jam once a week, and that would be really, really nice and ideal. But unfortunately, we are not in that world. So yeah,
right.
That's how it is.
For the new LP, is there a central theme to it?
There always is, and I think that it's kind of weird for me to like spell it out because I don't even know how it is in my own brain. I just know that there's like a feeling or a vibe or something that kind of all seems cohesive to me. But it is every aspect of the album, and even beyond the actual lyrics. I think just like the tone and the vibe and the structure of the songs and the sounds of the songs, they all say something as well. But it is, we're dealing with like depression, anxiety, injustice, like all of the things. And so it kind of comes out in this absurd manner because we're in an absurd world. And I think that there's that. But yeah, there's all the like political metaphors, social metaphors, and things like that are a part of the album. There's even like there's one track where I like we had internal strife for a while. I used the F word, not the word fuck, but the other F word that's like not acceptable to say, and I use it in a lyric. And I at first it was like jarring for them to hear that, and I had to explain what I was doing, and then we had like an internal debate if it was like acceptable for me to use that word, and I kind of dug my heels in the ground and said I think it definitely is, and there's a point to it, and I think it kind of says something. So we ended up agreeing on it, and it came out and it's on the record. But yeah, I think it's cool to have those like internal conversations and learn from each other on that, as well. Right.
With lyric writing, how in depth do you get? How much do you obsess over it? Like I'll get some words down on the page, and then I just dig in. It's like, no, this sentence sounds stupid. This word sounds stupid. These 2 words sound stupid. And I just keep plucking away and like get to a point where I need to get it perfectly. How does it work for you?
I'll usually start with 1 or 2 lines that on their own, before they're even applied to a song, kind of seem like a good starting point. And the thing is, a lot of the stuff I write is metaphorically sound. So like, I don't want to be too obvious necessarily. And I want you to be able to read them and apply them to, I mean, there's a general vibe, but you should be able to apply them to different topics or subjects. So, and I think I have like a style, which also could be like I don't know, like a handicap maybe, where I kind of revisit similar words or similar topics, I guess, of metaphors. And I like that in the sense that there's like a style or a cohesiveness throughout all of the stuff that I write. But I definitely find there being a lot of, humor, I guess, and maybe like kind of weird jabs, like in among things that are not funny. And I think that makes it more palatable, also makes the reader or the listener kind of take a look at it in a different way. I guess like off the top of my head, a good example is when we wrote this song called But Does It Fart? They were, I mean, it sounds like a fart joke. Whatever. It sounds really dumb. But there was like, it was really, the song overall was kind of just about the treatment of the environment. And so in a nutshell, but there's methane gas. And so there's fart in that realm. And so that was kind of like my play on words, and to kind of use that as like a way to title a broader subject.
Right. You're not touring all month, all year like you used to. I think your touring schedule slowed down when Locust slowed down, right? And you weren't just like out there all the time constantly.
Well, I was after, when the Locust first slowed down, I think I shifted to doing All Leather and Retox, and those bands toured relentlessly all the time. But yeah, the things have slowed down with Def Club is a good example. I think we've only toured the full US once, and we've done a handful of West Coast tours. And it's not that we don't want to tour or that I don't want to tour. It's that it's just harder financially, and also like recently the band van that I have kind of been using, that was initially the Locust, it had 440,000 miles on it. We sold it, so there's no van. And I can't really afford to pay to go on tour. So like, I don't need to make money necessarily. I just need to like not lose money. So that's the biggest issue for me.
Yeah. Would you want to do that again? Would you want to do a full US again if you could?
Of course. I mean, I think touring, playing live, and traveling is those are the things that kind of like make me feel sane. I mean, there's elements of it where like, I'll go on tour and miss Becky and my dog Captain and stuff like that. But I think that like traveling and touring is essentially part of the sort of need or desire that I have with playing music. I want to do that stuff. But yeah, if it was easier, I think financially it would be a no brainer. But unfortunately, it's not.
Right. How do you piece together your living? I remember last time we talked, you were working at a bar up until the time you were 40, but then you stopped that and you said, I only want to work for myself as much as I can because I'm cleaning up the puke of 20-year-olds at this bar. So how do you piece it all together? We know you have 31G, you do PR work, you're in several bands. What other kind of stuff do you do? How do you hold it all together? Oh, and part two of the question, do you work out of your house for the label and everything else? Or is there like an office space somewhere? What do you do?
Yeah, so I think I have, at this point in my life, I've found out ways to kind of navigate this world financially. So like when I do taxes, my tax person's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, how do you live?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So like right now, my account is not negative drawn, but it's very, 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 very low. And I kind of should normally be freaking out about that, but I don't know. I'll figure something out. I don't get any income from running 31G, but I do get income from royalties of certain releases on 31G. So like as a label, I don't pay myself, but as a person in Swing Kids, or sometimes the Locust or whatever it is, like I'll get paid, and that's how I'll make some money. Or I'll just do like, I do research studies all the time when they test shit on people or whatever. I do that or whatever. I'll just like hustle. So there's that. And then I've also found out ways to run 31G with very minimal cost. So like, there's a basement in this house that is used as like the office. And so that's where where I'm at right now is also my office. But the basement is like where it stores all of the stock, and where, there's just no cost to it because it's part of my house, and then the label doesn't have to pay for internet, stuff like that. So there's not a lot of cost. And same with like my house also has a rehearsal space. So if we're going to rehearse in San Diego, we don't have to pay for that rent. And so there's just things that I've tried to like build in my life that would help me live without needing income for it.
Based on conversations I've had with you and things said in the documentary, you seem like the type who never stops, never takes a break. You're just working on stuff constantly, and that's how I am too. I I don't know. Once I got clean and stopped drinking, I just need to be working, moving constantly to have peace. Like whether it's working on the podcast or working on the band or editing a podcast or working out, or I'm just always on the go. And if I'm on a vacation, or if I'm sitting too long, or if I'm just sitting watching people drink, or if I'm just sitting watching people talk, I get very edgy. I need to be on the move all the time. It sounds like you're like that too. Do you ever stop? Do you ever take a break? Do you ever like decompress? And if so, what do you do?
I don't know that I do, but also I don't and maybe I mis interpreted what you were saying, but like I don't sit and have restlessness or agitation or something from a thing not happening. My problem, or maybe it's not a problem, but when I sit, my brain is just going, and that's the thing that I can't stop and relax and like be like, oh, I'm gonna just chill out, because it's constantly going at like 10 or whatever. And so that's a problem that I think maybe I have to address. But I think that like there are things that I try to do to, because when I was younger, I would always get chronic migraines, and it was really crazy, like super bad, where I'd vomit and stuff. And so I lived with that my entire life. And in my mid to late 20s, I saw this doctor. Normally they're like, oh, you're allergic to dairy, or you need to drink more water, or you need like whatever. And they would just tell me all this bullshit. And then at one point I saw this doctor, and the doctor was like, hey, you have all these migraines. When did they start? And I was like, I don't know, 5. And he's like, 5, what? And I'm like, 5 years old. And he's like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. What happened at 5? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, life. And so he was saying that like that was PTSD. That was my way of dealing with PTSD from like domestic violence at home or whatever, like stuff like that. And so that level of stress that you'd find in life, be it like abusive home life or abusive social life, like whatever, or whatever it is, then you have migraines, then you're sick. So I had like constantly been trying to figure out how to like not have a migraine. And so in that process was eat better and try to exercise and do yoga and try to take time in the day to relax and try to sleep better, try to sleep normal hours, like all these different things. And so all of that stuff, I feel like helps me be able to take on absurd workload. And so that's just how I did it. And it's not very like cool sounding, but it's definitely helped me navigate in a world that is just full throttle all the time.
Yeah, working out. I started working out last year because I wanted to get in shape for some of my band shows that I had coming up, and that's made a world of difference because I'm getting older, and I used to just sit here in front of the computer all day and edit podcasts and eat horrible takeout, and it's not a sustainable model for long life. So I started running and doing body weight stuff and lifting weights, and that's made a difference. And now I can load out the equipment and not feel like I'm going to drop dead. Do you work out at all?
I don't like work out, but I do. I go to yoga 7 days a week, and I try to go to classes that are sort of like two classes that I go to are like power flow, which is, like pretty much a lot of working out, or these other ones that are very informative where like I'll kind of be in class and I'll be like, what the fuck are we doing? This seems so bizarre. And then I'll walk out of class and be like, holy shit, that is crazy feeling. I see what we just did. And those are the things that like, because then I get all this knowledge about like how my body works and things like that, which I can apply in every other situation, even on stage playing music and stuff like that. Like yoga helped me become a better singer in a sense, where I found ways to sing from my gut and not from my throat, things like that. And so, but yeah, I don't like work out like at a gym, but I will try to be physically active as much as possible. So
yeah, I think everyone needs something like that, especially as we get older. Because when I was young, I could just drink all day and night and plow through anything and not think about anything. but getting clean, thinking about stuff, thinking about the past, finally dealing with things, there has to be something. So yeah, I won't go to a gym, and I don't want to be involved with other people. I do everything at home, or I just run in the neighborhood, because I don't like working out enough that I want to be involved with other people. I just want to do it. I just want to do it for me to feel good. Have you ever, you've been through a lot with your parents and your dad being killed early in life, and just the things you had to deal with your mom's boyfriend when you were young, and all of that stuff. Like, did you ever have to go to therapy? Was there like a period in your life where you worked through it in that sense? Like, what did you do?
Well, I did actually go to therapy twice, and it was really strange. The first time I went was when my mom and her boyfriend, after my dad died, were like realizing that I was like just ruthless and being a total shithead, which I feel like maybe was justified. But so I had to go to therapy with the two of them, and that was very interesting. We went to one therapy session, and the woman was like, "This is a safe space. You can say whatever you want," and this and that. And I was like, "All right." And so it was really bizarre because at first she kind of was like, "You're into punk, and that stuff's like all the people that are into punk are drug addicts." So this is like 86, 87, 87, I guess, or something. So she's like, that's like, if you're going to be into punk, you're going to start doing drugs. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I just kind of like this music and shit. And then so I felt a little attacked by this woman. And so in that session, she was like, well, you can say whatever you want. Why are you reacting? Why are you acting the way you are? And I'm like, well, this guy beats me. He beats my mom. He's beat my dad. And so I'm acting like I am, I'm fucking pissed. And so he denied it. And then he beat me up when I went home. So I was like, oh, that's not going to work. And so we never went back to therapy, which was weird. And then at some point, like in my early 30s, I went to therapy 2 or 3 times, and then my insurance stopped. So I quit going, but it seemed fine. And my objective at that point was about my migraines. Like I was trying to like de-stress, is what everyone kept. Don't be so stressed out. I'm like, oh, it's really cool that you say that, but I'm like, I don't know, like I'm not like psyched on these migraines. So so then that never worked out either. But I don't know. I think like therapy can be seen in different ways. I really wish I think probably therapy is like saying like, hey, I like punk bands. And you're like, what kind of band? And there's like a lot of shitty bands, and there's like a lot of good ones. You just have to find the right therapist. But I've never had the ability to go searching for that. And so I think like maybe my therapy is found in other things, like my dog, or playing music, or trying to be productive with the things that I'm part of, or writing, or whatever it is. So the therapy can kind of come out in other ways, but I'm not anti-therapy. I just have not had the option to do it.
Yeah, I've never done go every week and talk to a person. I'm involved in other things, but like you said, I think mostly for me, it's the friends in my life and the things I'm creating, and yeah, that's it. Yeah. By the way, how is your mom doing? I think I remember you were posting a GoFundMe. How is she? How's she doing?
Yeah, she's doing much better. She's also very complicated, but she had cancer in her mouth and on her tongue, and so it's been eradicated, but she still doesn't really take care of herself as well as she should. And she's just she's very stubborn like me, I guess, but she's very difficult. But she's doing good. She's she's doing good. I think I worry about her all the time, but she's doing much better than she was at the time. There was so many issues, and she ended up having to sell her house. She moved to a place further out east by herself, and it's this mobile home park. And I think it was a lot for her because housing prices in San Diego are very expensive. But I think for her, she's very concerned with things like that, and the sort of like the perception of how people perceive you, and I think that maybe she has a bit of guilt or disappointment in how things turned out in her life, but she's doing much better, and she's healthier to an extent. She's still got some medical problems, and it's crazy because the doctors can't figure it out. And I'm like, I don't understand this. Like, you go to the doctor and they can't tell you why you keep fainting or like getting dizzy, but the doctors can like figure out a way to make boner pills for old dudes. It doesn't make sense. So it's yeah, it's crazy. That's a whole other topic. The medical industry's fucked up. Insurance industries and fucked up. So
everything in this country has been completely corrupted by capitalism, and
of course,
that's a whole separate podcast where that's like an hour and a half discussion just in and of itself.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I do think in the because I am very vocal about capitalism in a sense, and people will be like, "Well, you make money," and I'm like, "Ugh." I mean,
that's such a dumb guy response. Like when people are like, "Oh, you own a phone," it's like you have no idea what we're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about. It's very frustrating. That's like propaganda. That's just them spitting back propaganda that they've been sold.
Exactly, but I also think there is the term ethical capitalism, which I think is something that is worth making note of. I mean, there are capitalists that are very ethical, and I think that that's something like sporting. Like like now, I think there's a shift where people are trying to support small businesses and stuff like that. It's like when I go to get coffee, there's no fucking way I'm going to go to Starbucks. I'm going to go to an independent coffee shop, and they're capitalist, but I'm 100% wanting to support a local business than like this conglomerate, who has terrible business practices, very questionable business practices. So anyhow, yes.
Yeah, it's like the idea of ending capitalism. It's like, okay, health insurance companies exist and they are built on a business model of taking your money and not giving you care. It's like, let's get rid of that. Not, I'm upset that someone owns a phone. It's common sense.
Also, it's like it's becoming fairly impossible to function in Western civilization without a phone. So you're going to have that element to survive, which is just wild. Right.
Well, the new Def Club record is coming. Justin, is there anything else coming up that you can tell us about that we haven't discussed? Is Dead Cross going to put out something new? Are any of your bands doing anything? Is there any other projects you want to let people know about? Tell us.
I wish I had some Dead Cross news, but I don't. I don't know what's happening with that band. But I am working on, we are wrapping up a new Satanic Planet record, which has been being recorded for like 5 years. So it seems like a while, but it's coming to fruition to some extent. So Satanic Planet. And then I'm working on this like weird thrash project with some friends. I don't want to say too much about it yet. It was recorded also a long time ago, and we needed a vocalist. I play bass in it. We needed a vocalist, and we finally have someone that's tracking vocals, and it's pretty rad. So there's that. And then, I'm working on new Planet B stuff. And that's exciting because Johnny Whitney from the Blood Brothers is going to be on the album. So that it's been very fun to collaborate with him vocally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, thank you for coming back on the show. I appreciate you a lot. I appreciate everything you do. I'm looking forward to more. And thank you.
Thanks for having me. And I appreciate you even caring the first time, let alone the second time. So thank you so much. You're awesome.
All right. We are here now with Brian Amalfitano. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, Brian. I just spoke to Justin last week, and now I have you here, and we are going to get the full Def Club story from multiple angles, which I love. And I'm very curious to find out more about you too. But Brian, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Just hanging out at the shop, preparing myself before I leave the country for a couple weeks. So, getting stuff ready here.
Yeah. Where are you going?
Argentina. I have family out there, so I'm going to go visit. I try to go every year or so. So, just hang out.
Where at?
Buenos Aires in Mar del Plata. So it's about 6 hours south of Buenos Aires proper, like away from Lanús. And I grew up there. I have, both my parents are from there. My younger brother was born there when we moved there. So I spent a lot of my time in Argentina.
Nice. I have been to Buenos Aires before and I loved it. Great city.
Yes. Phenomenal.
Yeah. How long did you live there?
For a couple of years. We moved there when we were 8, roughly, in 4th grade. yeah, my parents were just sort of concerned that we were being Americanized a lot, and sort of stuck on TV and Sega Genesis and video games, and not going out to play and having our friends outdoors. So we moved to Argentina and lived there for a couple of years. Then my younger brother was born there, and we were trying to get our citizenship, but there was a lot of turmoil in the politics, the government. So a lot of changeovers in presidencies and all sorts of stuff. And then we had to redo all our paperwork. And then my dad eventually got tired of it because we had to just keep paying for more paperwork. And he said, we're going back. And we've been back. But I go every year or so, every couple of years, and try to visit my family always.
So you moved back there when you were in fourth grade?
Yeah.
How was that? How did you feel about that?
It was weird a little bit. Everyone sort of just thinks Americans, especially because Argentina had like a war between the English for the Falkland Islands, the Las Malvinas. And so they have a holiday that they celebrate there for, all the people who had died during this war. And, they were just, anyone that speaks English, they're just like, oh, you're a Yankee. I remember them calling me a Yankee. And, and eventually they catch on that England is completely different than the U.S. But as a kid, you're just kind of like, oh, that's an English speaker or whatever. So it was pretty interesting. But, I love my family. I always feel kind of torn between, America and the culture that I was sort of brought up with, So I have a lot of love for Argentina. And I know I'm American. I was born in Hollywood with my brother. My twin brother and I were born in Hollywood. But we consider ourselves more Argentine than American, just as far as attitude, I suppose. Just growing up with a different culture changes you.
Yeah, that's probably for the best, especially these days in this country.
Yes, very, very much so. Yeah, and it's also just like being able to speak Spanish, write, read. It's very much. My parents, we grew up speaking Spanish in the home. It's not a second language to us. We very much so helps me out even when I travel with the band. Planning to go to Europe, when you go to Spain, my dad's Italian, Argentine, so I can, decipher a little bit of Italian as well. And it's interesting to go to another country and try not to speak English so they don't think you're, an American.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation recently. I wish it was like that here, like how it is in European and other countries where it's just the norm that you'll learn several different languages. Here, it's just, no, you learn English and you get mad at everybody who doesn't speak English. And I don't think it should be that way. No.
It's wild, because a lot of kids out there in Europe, when you're like, how do you know like 4 languages and you're like 8 years old, 9 years old, it's, and it only helps them, and it makes them more understanding of different cultures. I think more intelligent, the more that you understand different languages. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
That's the time to learn too, when you're young. It's harder when you get to our age.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're in the record shop right now. I can see an original At the Drive-In shirt behind you right there. I like that.
Yeah, I have a ton of my T-shirt collection, when I was in high school and I was 120 pounds. And, so I have all my small T-shirts that I'm like, I don't fit in this anymore. I'm going to sell it, and I have like 60 Nirvana shirts in my closet, and At the Drive-In, Radiohead, Mars Volta, all sorts of different stuff from when I was growing up. So
yeah, up until about 2017, I was a size small or medium in some cases. And that is absolutely astounding to me. I mean, I'm still pretty thin, but it's like small. Forget about it. That's like a dish rag now.
Yeah, it's wild. Also, maybe when I was younger, I definitely shrunk my shirts by putting them in the dryer, and now it's like hang dry, try to make them last. But also, I think in general, being that skinny, I think the pandemic really I started cooking a lot, and eating a lot more. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going from no more mediums, just large now. So.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I just started cooking more of my own meals now. It's a long story. I I lived in an apartment that didn't have gas for a year. And then before that, I lived in an apartment that had a roach problem. So I never wanted to cook. And it was just all these factors that led to me ordering every single meal. And somehow I didn't gain weight.
It's that metabolism change for sure. I think also just like after the pandemic, the economy or anything just in general made me realize going out. I used to go to a lot of concerts, maybe 4 to 5 concerts a week. You know, I'm in LA, so you could go for a $10 concert, free concerts all the time. And I realized how much I was saving by not going to concerts, for parking, for, you know, going out food, people drink at concerts, you know, they spend, and I was like, wow, I'm saving so much money during the pandemic. And, you know, after a while, I was like, cooking at home is probably better. And because we couldn't play shows, I kind of took to cooking at home as kind of its own art. And then I kind of realized how meticulous it is and precise it is. And it's almost like music. You get a rhythm, you know, once you start, you know, just cooking and creating sauces and all these things. So I got really into it for a while.
I like that. Yeah, my girlfriend has shown me that if you cook actual good food, you can enjoy eating. Because I would just make lazy, bad stuff. But then she cooks, and I'm like, wait, I enjoy eating. I think about it now, and now I'm addicted. All of the money I'm saving is like a high, so I am in pursuit of that now. It's great.
Yeah, I think also, you know, when I was young, I didn't think about saving money, and then you get old, and you're like, oh crap, I gotta start paying a lot of bills, you know. So
yeah. So your record store, Spinning Plate Records, that started a year into the pandemic?
About a year into the pandemic, yeah.
What happened? Like, how did you decide to open it? How did you get it up and running?
There was really no like ability to tour or make money, really. You know, I've been a musician, a struggling musician, as all musicians are. I was doing wedding photography. I was playing in cover bands. You know, I was doing all these different gigs, and that all immediately stopped during the pandemic. And so it became, when it started opening up slightly, I saw that a lot of people were just selling things on, you know, Discogs or eBay, or doing, you know, what they could to make extra money. And I had, you know, my own record collection, and I had been collecting records, you know, most of my life, and being obsessed with music, obsessed with gear, you know, and it just kind of led, you know, one thing to another. It was a really small store too. We didn't have half of the stuff that we have now, and sort of just, you know, started curating and growing and kind of going from there.
What other kinds of stuff you have in there? Are those movies I see in the background?
Yeah, so we have tons of VHS. I don't really do Blu-ray or DVD at the moment, but we have VHS, which a lot of people like to collect. Records, obviously, CDs, cassettes. We used to have 8-tracks, T-shirts and stuff like that, but cassettes are pretty popular. I think everyone with how streaming is, and now it's becoming more expensive, and they don't actually get to own it. People really enjoy physical media, especially things that have like a nostalgic sense to it. You know, they remember going to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or something and getting a movie for the weekend, you know, or just the physicality of having a record and being able to read it, look at the artwork. It's more of a ritual. We still, you know, people still use Spotify and all these things at Bandcamp and to stream as much as possible because they don't want to take their CDs on the road or whatever. It's limited, but at home, it's more for the ritual of, you know, listening to an entire record, you know, all in a row.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that more. I had a revelation today. I was listening to a promo from a band through a website, and you get the full, you know, good wave file through the speakers and everything. And then I jumped to Spotify to listen to some of the other band stuff. And oh my God, the Spotify sound like shit.
Oh yeah,
the
absolutely.
Quality is like unlistenable, and I didn't really fully realize it until today.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're like you know, it depends if you're like an audiophile also, and you have really good speakers and you know, sort of a system that lends itself to listening to it. That's great. Some people have, you know, really cheapy all-in-one sort of, you know, CD player, cassette, and they have the worst speakers, so it doesn't really make a difference for them, you know. But if you really enjoy it and you have a good system, then it does make a huge difference. There's also this other thing. Spotify really sucks, and obviously at the moment they're doing terrible things. But there's this one, Qobuz, or it's Qobuz, and it's like a high definition version of Spotify, and they have hundreds of millions of tracks as well. So we've been looking into that as well, just because Spotify is also expensive, and obviously, they're being dicks right now. So we might transfer over to them at the store so we could have the music here and sort of be a little bit more ethical about, even the streaming, especially because they don't pay their artists anything, So.
Right. Yeah, you reminded me during the pandemic, there was I think there was a big retro push or people just buying old stuff. I got really into retro gaming and bought old Nintendo games and got my old Nintendo refurbished. And I don't even really think about it or use it anymore, but that was like a major thing during the pandemic. Did you get into any of that, or is it just primarily records that you collect?
I've always had records. I have my NES, my Bart versus the Space Mutants. My mom was a big Dr. Mario fan. So we have our NES, we have our Sega Genesis. I think I still might have my Atari, but we had it all. Now they make them, where you could buy the small Nintendo system and it has 100 games or whatever, but it's not quite the same. Even playing it through a CRTV. And so I enjoy that. My wife also likes the Wii, so she'll play Zelda and all these things. And definitely when we were in lockdown, there was a lot of that, like collecting and buying, weird little things from my past and my memory, nostalgic things. I think that's also part of what collecting is. It has a sense of nostalgia, at least the stuff that I like to collect. I don't collect too many new things,
Yeah, exactly. Same here. So the store has expanded since you've opened. You said you used to be in a smaller location.
Not a smaller location. We just had a lot less stuff. It's still the space has definitely filled out with, everything that we want to do. We're thinking about even adding a little coffee shop in it. We've been doing comedy nights. We've been doing movie nights as well for the sort of just the people to hang out and do. Here there's, it's San Gabriel Valley and Covina. So there's ice raids and other stuff near LA. And so we've been trying to do a lot of political things, protests, hosting, events here, weekly meetings for the city council so that we could go try to pass new regulations to help people out, but also to do fun stuff, to go outside and watch a movie together. We showed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 2, The Secret of the Ooze at a pizzeria. So just try to, not always be a super downer and, because it's rough right now.
Yeah, it's bad, but that's awesome that you can give back. How is business? I mean, that's the dream, to own a business and have that be the thing and not have to answer to anybody. How is it going?
Yeah. There's, in certain respects, it is very much that, you enjoy it. Obviously, I enjoy ordering records. I enjoy probably too much receiving records and wanting to keep a lot of them, but realizing that you have to make money. But you don't really, people tell you don't work a day in your life when you have something that you love, but it's a lot of hard work.
That's actually not true. You work a lot more, but you don't mind it.
A lot more. Yes, exactly. So I think it's part of that. I've kind of this is kind of an expansion of my brain, of all the things that I love. There's a lot of Pee-wee dolls, Pee-wee Herman I love, and all these weird little things, Divine and John Waters and David Lynch hanging around everywhere. So, it's cool to be here. I definitely like it. It's not a drag. I don't have to ask anyone if I want to go tour for a month, or obviously other than my wife or someone, they'll be, hey, can you watch the store while I'm gone? So.
Right. But how long have you been married?
We got married 12/11/22, so about 3 years almost.
Nice. And how long have you been together?
Going on 9 years.
Nice.
It makes it a lot easier when you marry someone that has the same interests, so she loves music. We've gone to so many concerts, and it's a lot easier in life when when you find that.
That's what I wanted to ask, because I've done it both ways. I've been with people who don't respect what I do at all and hate all the music I listen to, and that is not pleasant. And now I'm with someone who listens to almost pretty much the same exact music as me and loves to go to the same shows I do and plays, and we have a lot in common, and that just makes everything easier.
Yeah, absolutely. movies, going to plays, going to concerts constantly, allowing for each other to, explore new things. I was always a big reader. I got really into Burroughs and J.G. Ballard and, all these weirdos when I was growing up. And I could sit there and read. We could also watch trash TV as well and, still be comfortable. But we have a lot of the same musical taste, which is great. And again, it's you when you grow up and you have people that don't like what you like or criticize, it's fine to not like what I like, but to criticize it and sort of judge people. I think maybe when I was younger, I was a lot more judgmental about people's musical taste, but now it just makes no sense to do it. To each their own,
Exactly. I've heard it all. Devil music, kill your mother, kill your father music. Everything you listen to sounds the same. And I'm like, I heard that recently. Someone said to me, oh, everything you listen to sounds the same. And I was like, I just thought, wow, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
You really have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, I digress. So you're in Argentina. You moved there in 4th grade. When did you come back? How old were you when you came back?
So we just lived there for a couple years. So I was about 11 when we came back and started school again, and everything changed in those couple of years. Even like the lingo at the moment. No one was saying yo, or there was just different verbiage and stuff, and so you felt like you fell behind.
How about your intro to the world of punk, hardcore, metal? Whatever it is, what was your thing? How did you find it? What kind of bands grabbed you? Tell us about that.
The first band was in Argentina. I had a couple older friends. Maybe if I was 8, they were like 10, 12, 11, 13. And they had bands. The older brother had bands. And they were really into like Metallica and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Argentina obviously doesn't have a lot of like bands that were being, imported into the country or touring the country at that point. But my buddy Juan Matias, he loved Nirvana, and I got really into Nirvana at that point. He invited me to see them at Vélez Sarsfield Stadium, but I was too young. My parents were like, "There's no way you're going to a soccer stadium to watch a band," And then Kurt passed away the following year. And so I never got to see Nirvana. Then when he died, they played Unplugged in New York on MTV nonstop. It was 24 hours. And my buddy was there crying about it. And I was like, wow, like, what is this? And then I came back and got into, I bought Nirvana's Bleach, which was the first CD I bought at Circuit City. And I thought it had a sticker on it that said, this is Nirvana's first album. So I thought, it's got to be the best one or whatever. It's their first record. I didn't know what, singles were and what popular was. And it was super heavy. And from there, I got into, Sonic Youth and all the things that maybe Kurt was liking. Butthole Surfers, Locust Abortion Technician, Daniel Johnston, lo-fi, experimental music. I was never really like a classic rock head at that point. My brother was more into punk rock, but it was like crusty stuff like Dystopia. Then there was a lot of backyard gigs here in La Puente and like San Gabriel Valley. So we'd go to like punk rock gigs. There'd be a lot of hip hop. So there's a lot of cholos and sort of punk rockers always, and then that kind of spawned, there was like power violence happening, a lot of Despise You, Infest, and things like that. But I always liked a little bit of everything. I like the weirder stuff. So, I even liked The Locust growing up. I liked Justin's bands. They were all weirder. And I liked new wave and sort of, I guess, egg punk is what some of them call it. Egg versus chain punk. I was maybe in between the line there.
Yeah, The Locust were standouts. I remember at the time, I'll never forget, I was in my friend's front yard and I'm like, to this guy, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, we're going to see this band called The Locust. They have a song called Moth Eaten Deerhead. And I was like, yeah. Cool. And then I remember that first CD, the tiny one, like no one else did that. And then I heard the song and it had like a Dillinger Escape Plan sounding riff. And I really loved them a lot at the time. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. So they were always standouts for me.
Yeah, I feel like everyone that also punk. A lot of people were like, "Oh, are you?" Yeah, I didn't dress the part. I didn't dress crusty. I wasn't like a street punk. I just thought it was weird that everyone had to look a certain way also, and I was this skinny kid. And so everyone thought like I was real effeminate, kind of like not hardcore for sure, And so the Locust was like, the same thing to me. I was like, oh, these skinny sort of dorky art punks, and I liked that because they were weird, but they were still heavy, and but I also loved melody and, alternative and grunge, which kind of it spawned from a different, era of punk rock, so.
Were you playing guitar at that point? When did you start playing in bands?
I started playing when I was about 13. I took an elective class in high school. It was not good. It was 30 kids all trying to tune one string together. So a lot of dissonance, and then there was a couple kids that had a band, and they found out that I liked Sonic Youth, and they wanted me to join as a third guitarist. But their bass player had just left that week. So I said, well, I can just play bass. And, I figured it's a stringed instrument. I don't care. I just want to be in a band. And I picked up the bass, bought a bass amp, a bass, and just started playing. I liked the rhythm aspect, being, trying to write melody hooks. Because I also like Chris Novosellich's like bass lines. I thought like, simple guitar, but you could write a bass hook. So I was really interested in that. And then from there, every other band that I had made just eventually became, I was on guitar, because I had weird guitar tunings and all sorts of weird stuff, so. And then I started collecting pedals a lot. So, and my pedals became a focus for me.
How did you learn about different tunings and stuff? I really only even began experimenting with different tunings, I don't know, in the past few years. It was always like standard and then drop D, and that's it. So how did you figure that stuff out and start experimenting with it?
I got into a lot of no wave music, and I admired obviously Sonic Youth, and at that point it was like I could see that they could use power tools on their guitars, and they could use drumsticks, and they were sort of playing the guitar in non-traditional ways. And so then I started reading on tablature and seeing that these people had these different tunings. Mostly they would learn them from like Glenn Branca and sort of stuff like that. And they would figure out like drone notes. Neil Young used to have a couple of the double drop D thing. And when I started going to Sonic Youth concerts, I would always end up with a set list. And on the set list, it would tell you the guitar that it had a note on it that had the guitar that they use and the tuning that they use. So the guitar tech would know what guitar to give them to during what song. And so, it would just say E, D, D, G, B, E, E, B, 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 B. And you're like, what the fuck? And I'd have to figure it out. It's like, oh, that's what they meant, So it was really, really weird. And then I would, just try to just tune everything to whatever I wanted at certain points and figure out different chord voicings, what would work. So just experimenting at that point too.
Yeah, that's the real galaxy brain moment, when I'm not looking up a tuning and I'm like, wait, I want to do this. Let me just try to do it. Whoa.
Yeah. And it forces your even because I'm right-handed, I really want to be left-handed because of Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix and whatever. I would turn the guitar upside down and try to strum, with my left hand. And so that would make my brain think of like different chords even because so just doing little tricks like that of like trying, because I wasn't born naturally talented in that way. It's like, oh, maybe this will give me a different sound, a different edge, a different, idea, and sort of being creative in that form,
Yeah. Where in Southern California did you live when you were growing up, when you came back and you were just starting to be in bands and everything?
I always grew up in San Gabriel Valley. So we grew up in Covina, West Covina, La Puente. La Puente was where most of the bands, La Puente, El Monte, Baldwin Park, where most of the bands we'd go see backyard shows in. So I've always lived around here. We recently moved to Rancho this last year. And this is the first time that I've not lived in San Gabriel Valley, which is weird for me. But because my store is here, I'm still, stoked to, be anchored here.
So what did you want to do? Like, I mean, you're young, you're playing in bands. Is that all you wanted to do? Did you think about, oh, I'm going to go to college, or did you have some sort of career path in mind? Where were you at?
No, not at all. Yeah. As soon as I started playing guitar, I mean, I don't think anyone understood. Like, it wasn't like, let's be famous. No one knows what fame entails. There's not like, oh, maybe we could make a living out of it. And even then, making a living now is different than maybe 15 years ago. At a certain point in high school, after high school, I went to Citrus College as a community college, and I took engineering classes, business, music classes, stuff like that. And my parents were just like, yeah, but that's not like a real job. Like, that's not a real career. You have to get a job to pay for this. So then I had to start working, and then I got into the graphics field. I worked until I was like 25, and then I quit just because I was like, I was a journeyman. I was making good money. And, my parents were like, oh, yeah, you could have a family, have this. And eventually I was just like, yeah, but I don't want to work 12-hour days. I don't care that I'm making good money, And then the government taxed me a bunch because they said I was a single dependent. And I was like, yeah, this is not for me. I don't care about paying the government. And I'd rather struggle. I'm fine with having the minimal amount of stuff. I could sleep on a couch. And so I did that for about, 10, 12 years, whatever it was. And just struggled.
You couch surfed for 10 years?
No, just essentially not have a job for 10 years.
Okay. Like not a job on the books, like a W-2. No. Yeah.
Yeah. I would go out and do photography for hip hop clubs, photography for sort of electronic clubs. Then I started doing wedding photography and just sort of surviving, off that money, not really, lived with my parents and then not have to pay rent. But then that's where it became like, okay, well, you have to eventually move out and get a real job and do this and do that, and, with anything a musician, you can't just sit at home. You have to do something. So
right.
It's part of it. At least in America, they don't subsidize musicians here. So
not at all. They do not help out at all. You hear about subsidies and grants and things happening in Europe and other countries, but not here, or not often anyway.
Yeah. It's funny because when we tour in Europe, I have a lot of friends that'll be like, oh, yeah, they pay us for these many months, and then I just go get a job for these many, and then I could just kind of hang out at home. And I'm like, wow, that's insane. It would never happen here. It would just never happen. We're not valued as people who are giving back to the community and it's not mental health. It doesn't help people. Like, no, you're just being lazy. Because then everyone would be a musician here in America, So I don't know. It's a weird world.
So it's a while until we get to Def Club. I know you've played in a number of bands. Meth, See You Next Tuesday, Usurp, Synapse, right?
We've played with them. I've only ever really played it. I mean, I've played in Def Club. I've played in Antichrist Demon Core. I played in Mother Echo, like different psychedelic rock bands, stuff like that. But the only real band that I feel is a real band is Def Club, for me personally.
Yeah. So were you ever in a band that did like any significant regional or national touring or anything like that?
Antichrist Demon Core, we did, or ACXDC, we did tours of Europe, we did American tours, we did a bunch of stuff like that. That was with my brother, my twin brother. He's the singer for the band, and some friends from La Puente. They started in 2003, and then I played in different. I played with them since 2016, I think it was. I started, and I played for 4 years, something like that.
Do you still play with them?
No.
I guess you're busy with Def Club now, huh?
Def Club became the only thing that I wanted to do. When we, since my brother and I are twins, we butted heads a lot. And so when Justin said, hey, let's make a band, it became sort of like, yeah, let's do that. But also that was like a power violence band. And I only really was allowed to use distortion. They were like, power violence does not have pedals. Power violence does not have delay. There's no, wahs and phasers or whatever. And so all that weirdo stuff wasn't really part of the genre. And I was sort of confined in that sound. And when, I started meeting up with Justin and talking about this band, I was like, hey, can I use pedals? And he's like, absolutely. It's like, how weird can we get? It's like, as weird as we want. So it became a lot more, open-minded, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so you have a twin brother. So do you get
Yeah.
along outside of a band setting?
No, we haven't really. I mean, we both, because we're twins and because we've both been in bands for so long and we both own record stores and we've argued a lot all of our lives about everything. So, I mean, I love my family, but you don't need to get along with everyone.
That's true. That's pretty amazing. He also plays in bands and also has a record store, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that's yeah. I mean, that's great because that must have been tough for you in that band because you mentioned, your love of pedals and effects and experimenting with all that stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined the band and I enjoyed deciphering what it was that the old guitarists played, so like their style, how their hand movements, how they structured their chord voicings or whatever. But for the most part, it was like, drop deep, one finger, just kind of move it real fast. and that was it, the limitation of it. And so when I wanted to get a little weirder or when I would try things that were kind of out of the box, it wouldn't be met with like, oh, well, that's not power violence. That's not this. That's not this. And for me, those genres sort of already existed for, ages, decades, and so there's bands that are iconic, even in like hardcore, there's iconic bands, like everyone just wants to sound like them. And it sounds like you're just trying to sound like them. Whereas with Def Club, I really made a conscious effort once I was out of that genre and creating this new band with Justin and Scott and everybody and Jason to find my own voice as far as guitar, as far as sounds, as far as tone, as far as even using a jazz master, which I loved because Sonic Youth used it, but using it in a very heavy setting. It's like, can I do that? Because most hardcore people, they wouldn't use that guitar to save their life. It's like they don't a whammy bar.
Right. Yeah. I mention this often on the show. If it's a very established genre with a very strict set of rules, it's not really going to be something I'm interested in playing. Because whatever, it sounds like this is the case for you too. Whatever I'm entering into, I want to distinguish my own voice, my own sound within that thing and experiment. Now, it can be difficult because when I'm writing, I have a very clear idea of what I want the song to sound like in my head, and everyone else in the band might not have the same clear idea I do. And then I'm like, wait, why aren't they playing it like this? Or wait, why are they doing that? And that's when you talk and figure things out, right? But yeah, I want to experiment. I want to try something different. That's the true originality these days because everything's been done. So you have to be almost like a good chemist of music and put together the right mixture of things. And I think that's when really interesting things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there's so many influences, at least, I own a record store and I've been listening to music forever. Like to be only a listener of one genre and only want to create that one genre, it seems so limited. So I take pieces, maybe consciously, unconsciously, of different elements of genre and or bands. Like, oh yeah, I really got inspired by listening to this, or like I saw this one guitar trick and I wanted to try it out in this context. And when you take different things and put them in a completely different setting, then it becomes sort of interesting to see what comes out.
So as legend has it, you were at a Mets show with Justin, and then he said he wanted to start a band, right? He wanted to do something new. And that was how Def Club initially got started?
Initially, yeah. Well, we played with Retox. We played like 3 shows with him. And obviously, I told him, I'm a big Locust fan. I bought his book, had him sign it like a dork. And, and he was much of, he obliged me. And then I, again, had been going to shows, 4 or 5 times a week anywhere. And I was obsessed with Mets at that point. And so I went to go see him in LA, Sacramento, San Diego. I just followed them around for like 4 or 5 shows or whatever. And I ended up at Casbah and Justin showed up and he was like, oh, hey, what's up, dude? Like, I haven't seen you in a while. And he was kind of surprised. He's like, oh, I didn't realize that you liked other music, like he thought maybe I was just like a power violence guy, or I was only like into, but I was like, no, Metz is great. I love those dudes, they're phenomenal. And he was like, oh, cool. We should jam. We should do something. And I just kind of was like, okay, sure. I didn't really expect it to be real almost, you know what I mean? Cause I was like, dude, you're in the Locust and you're in Dead Cross and you're, whatever. And, I just thought maybe he was pulling my leg a little bit. and so it took me maybe like 4 or 5 months, whatever it was, before I sent him an Instagram message. And he was on tour with Dead Cross. And I was like, hey man, you really want to start a band? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And he said, but we got to find a really, really good drummer. And I said, okay. And then so we started looking for drummers at that point.
Yeah. And Scott, how did he come into the picture, the drummer?
So I was playing with this other dude named Brian Amalfitano. He was in a band. He was like, maybe a couple months where I was writing with him, but he really didn't want to jam. So like I could bring riffs, but he didn't want to wing it. He'd be like, what do you want me to play? Or make a recording of it, and then I will record my part to it. And he would write songs, be like, this is what I want the guitar to do. And so it felt really weird to make it like almost like a studio project immediately. And I didn't really like that. And John Severson from Daughters said, well, I got this guy named Scott Osmond, and he's in Texas right now, but he's moving to San Diego. And maybe you should jam with him. And so when Scott came up, I would play a riff, he would play the drums, he'd play a drum thing. He'd be like, yeah, just make up a guitar thing. And we just organically started writing things. And he'd be like, oh, if you do this, I could go here. And it just became like, cool, like this could actually work. Like jam in the sense, not like Grateful Dead jam or something like we were, but like, cool, we could come up with something. And it seemed like it would work better, that we could play off of each other. And so he just kind of became the guy. And he was playing in Weak Flesh, I think, in Texas. So he came from like a grindy sort of band, and he'd do blast beats and all these things. And I came from Power Violence. So I think like maybe the first EP was a little bit more related towards Power Violence, and sort of spastic and quick. We only had 5 songs in 6 minutes. And I think that was just us shedding our skin, sort of getting rid of the old form that we had in us, until we started developing more of a Def Club sound, quote unquote.
Right. It takes a little bit of time for you to settle into what you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way you're describing how you write with Scott, it sounds like how I write too. Have you ever been like a file trading guy, or, you add your part, I add my part? I've never done that. Not to say that I never would, but like I just do it in the room like you're talking about.
Yeah. I've only ever done that when, like for people that are out of state and they're just like, hey, we really want you to add guitar to this track. And so they'll send me files and I'll kind of figure out what I think might work. And for the most part, it has. I haven't ruined anyone's song yet, I guess. But that's the only file trading. Like Scott and I and Jason and I, we never really did that. I mean, we have voice memos and stuff like that, but those are always hard to decipher. So it's better to be in a room because you get ideas more quickly, but also we shoot down a lot of ideas too, immediately. It's like, nah, that's not really good. I'm not feeling that or whatever, So.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about that with shooting down ideas. How does it work within the dynamics of Def Club? I'm curious because I'm in a band too. Like if you play a riff and the drummer isn't feeling it, will the drummer shoot it down? Do people take a vote sometimes? Like, how do you guys work it?
No, we don't spare each other's feelings. Yeah, it's very quick. It's like, yeah, no, that idea sucks. Next, or it'll be like, hey, I got this thing, and I'll play it for like a couple minutes, and then everyone else will be doing anything else other than listening, and they'll be playing completely different things, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm not really feeling that, and then we'll just move on, and which is, if you learn to not be offended, you could work with that, because you could create something as a band as opposed to like, I think you should play this, I think you should, or whatever, and for a long time, because I played in other bands where I was like, hey, you should, why don't you try this on drums? Why don't you try this on bass? You know, I was used to like maybe telling people or they tell me. When we did this, Scott had a very firm, he'd say, yeah, why don't you let the drummer be the drummer? You know, and you know, be like, let the singer be the singer, let the lyricist be the lyricist, let the guitarist do it. I was like, all right, you know, and I'd sort of like, huh, okay, you know, and eventually I'd be like, oh, well, you know, because you do have to have a certain amount of trust and faith in what they're doing, you know, and I think also that was prior to us establishing our own language with each other, you know, within the band, finding out how you sound, finding out what you want to do, you know, those are important things and they take time. So shooting down those ideas might get you quicker versus like just sort of saying, yeah, I'll play anything you want me to play. Cause then you're just wasting everyone's time, you know? So we kind of cut the fat real quick in this band, which is pretty interesting. You know, that's why we released an EP so quickly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in those dynamics because I'm figuring them out myself. So it's like, yeah, I think ultimately that's how you have to do it. But it is hard sometimes. Like if you have a real clear vision of how you think it should go, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess letting go sometimes can help.
Yeah, I mean, before I used to also, you know, give shoe boxes of CDs to whomever, you know, when we'd be in bands, be like, oh, we're starting a new band. Like, here's all this music that I listen to. Check it out. That way, when I refer to it, you don't have like because some people don't have the same reference points as us, you know? And so, yeah, even within Def Club, someone will be like, oh, yeah, it sounds like this song. And I'm like, dude, I've never heard that song ever in my life. So you can't accuse me of ripping it off. But it's like, oh, it's like, but also, you know, all music exists already, so of course it's going to sound like something eventually, you know. But having reference points makes it a little bit easier, you know. And definitely, there's times that we throw out reference points just to sort of anger each other. You know, this sounds like Tool, and everyone's like, ah, you know, like that's gross, or whatever, you know, like not to knock Tool. I like them live enough. But yeah, we could just talk shit about people, you know, it's fun.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like everybody has different reference points. Like I might think it sounds like this, someone else might think it sounds like this, but it still comes together and makes this. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about working together with people in a band.
Yeah. It all informs itself, you know, it informs each other and sort of expands your own ability to dialogue within that group.
Have you ever had a riff be rejected and then try to sneak it in again later?
Oh, absolutely. And I've done it. Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's been riffs that have been hanging around for years. And then sometimes I'll just have a voice memo or I'll have our laptop out and we'll have recorded it, you know, on GarageBand or something or Pro Tools. And just play it. I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out this one thing that I thought might be cool. And be like, oh, that song is really cool. Why don't we play that? It's like, dude, because you hated it 4 months ago, you know? But eventually, you know, we might be able to rework it or, you know, just be a little bit in a different headspace, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep an open mind and cycle things back in because I've done that where I'm like, no, this. And then 2 months later, someone's like, hey, what about this? And I'm like, okay, you're right. Let's change it. You know, whereas 2 months ago, it's like, no, this is it.
Yeah. I think we had that on one of the songs on this album, End of an Ear, which is the last song. And we had been playing it for quite some time, at least like a year, 2 years, in sort of practice spaces every once in a while. And, Justin just wasn't feeling it. He was like, I don't know what to do vocally. I don't think that this song would fit for us. I think maybe you should get another singer for this. You know, you could have a guest singer. I won't be offended, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, it has to be us. You know, we're the band. Like, and eventually they were like, yeah, I just maybe change the guitar. I don't like the guitar. I like the bass. I like the drums. I don't like the guitar. And that's sort of like, you know, it kind of hurts you for a little bit. And I just sit there, you know, in my feelings. And then I create something out of nowhere because I have to get rid of that I've been playing for a year and a half, you know, or whatever. And I'm like, all right, fine. This is trash. And then I played something and immediately it was like, that's great. That should be the song. And it happened, and then it ended up on the album. And so it's being able to let go of your ego, even if it's something, or just because the mechanical, you've been doing it so long one way, you shouldn't just force it on someone, man. And also, you should be open-minded. And for the most part, that's what we try to do.
Are you happier with that song now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I'm wondering about that. Like, generally, are you happier when you have to change something? Are you happier with the final product? Or has it ever happened where you're like, man, I really wish I could have hung on to that old thing?
No, I kind of just wipe the slate clean at that point. I'm like, all right, this is what it is now, And so there's no point really for me, other than like, oh, maybe I could have performed this better, or maybe we could have changed this slightly in the new context. But as far as regretting changing anything, like I don't think I've ever felt forced by anyone in the band to change something to not my liking. I think we all consciously try to think like, hey, even though three of us like it and one of us doesn't, it's not going to be a democracy of like, well, fuck that guy, like that. Cause then you start building resentment and you don't like what you're doing in the band, or your participation in the band. Cause you're like, oh, they keep changing my stuff, or I keep changing their stuff. And it becomes weird, So, I just don't think about it that way. I think like, how are we the happiest with what we've put out, together?
Around what year was it when the band got started, when you first started piecing together songs with Scott?
2019. Yeah, it was only months before the first EP.
Okay. So I'm guessing you got slowed down by the pandemic like a lot of people.
Yeah, we wrote the EP. We got a second guitarist, Leo Olfelder. He played I think we played 8 shows, and then the pandemic hit, and then we let Leo go. We had a bunch of new material that we were writing and recording and demoing. And then we had Tommy Meehan from the Manx, and now he's in Guar. And he had a studio. He was learning bass as a fill-in. And eventually he just like, oh, I'll be the guitarist with you. And so during the pandemic, we were sort of focused on recording, and we had pandemic relief money. So he started buying pedals. I started buying pedals. It was like we were getting like 3 pedals a week in the mail. It was ridiculous. And built my pedal board to kind of where it is now. I had a smaller one before. And then I helped him build his pedal board to kind of play off the sounds that, I wanted, he wanted. He was a pedal guy anyways, but just kind of focus on like, hey, if I did this, you could do this. So get this pedal and I could get this one.
Nice. The new LP is coming from Def Club. It's called We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness. I've heard the whole thing. I love it. And yeah, there's a lot I love the band. It's heavy, but it's interesting heavy. There's a lot of different stuff going on. There's a lot of interesting guitar sounds going on. So I'm not surprised to hear that you like to experiment with all that stuff. And I'm excited for the rest of the world to hear it. Well, when did you start working on it? When did you start writing?
Some of the songs like Counterfeit Coin, Frequency Illusions, and I forget what other one. They've been kind of in the set lists for a little bit. We've been working on them for a bit. End of an Ear was the one that's been around the longest that I eventually changed the guitar riff to. So they've all kind of been floating around there. But when we decided, all right, we need to record a new album, this is the timeline, we had a bunch of ideas already sort of simmering, and we could kind of change them quickly and kind of figure out what we wanted to do, So we started practicing a lot the months before recording and sort of breaking them all down which way we wanted. But also I think it was a conscious effort of how do we make an album that's more cohesive, which hopefully it is. Which is like during the pandemic, the first album, Productive Disruption, the album was kind of bits and pieces. Like here's a riff, here's the stop, here's this, and we do, and sort of like it became a little bit chaotic maybe. And so that's why maybe Justin doesn't quite like that LP as much as this one. And we were kind of figuring out what we were going to be as a band. The first EP was tight, super fast punk. The LP was like 14 songs. So it became like, we could do this kind of band. We could play this kind of riff. We could play that. And now we're kind of like, all right, let's write a 3-minute song and be like not a normal band, but let's write a normal amount of time of music and see if we could do that. So it became sort of a challenge to ourselves. Can we write heavy songs, but with hooks and melodies, and how do we do this and stay weird? So it was interesting.
Right. So it sounded like there was a push to be more cohesive and just lock into the sound of Def Club. How else did it differ from maybe previous releases? Was there any specific things you and the band had in mind that you wanted to accomplish?
I think because there was so many ideas with riffs or something, Justin always thought like, oh, it sounds like we're all kind of going off at the same time. So like the drums are going off. There's a bunch of sounds happening everywhere. There was 2 guitars. So it became sort of a cacophony of sounds and sort of chaos at a certain point where maybe you can't lock in, where this became like, all right, well, this is clearly a verse. This is clearly a chorus, even though sometimes we, don't agree on what a verse and a chorus is. But it's like, all right, well, this has to be this. This is how we repeat this. We should do it this length. We'll give you double the length here. That way you could do more vocal breath, not be so compressed of a song, because we take a song and compress it to a minute, and when you have a song that's slow down the BPM a little bit, maybe repeat instead of 4 bars, do 8 bars, it just becomes a mathematical equation of like how to become a better songwriter, essentially, and that's just mimicking bands that I grew up with. I was like, Nirvana is a prime example. It's like, all right, cool. This is the intro. Here's the verse, the chorus, the verse, the chorus, a bridge, a chorus. Can we mimic that in a punk rock setting, in a weird experimental setting? And I think even weirdo bands do that, and that's sometimes how it becomes accessible, like how you repeat something, because if you repeat it enough, it doesn't sound completely out of left field. It doesn't sound completely weird. You're expecting it maybe. And I think like even I read an article about people that listen to EDM music, they like the drop, when it builds up towards the drop, because they feel the anticipation. And so when that a chorus is coming, you feel that anticipation. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of thinking about music, so repetition isn't necessarily a hindrance, just pop structures. Having that box that you have to work within is still interesting to me, So we tried, I think, to work within a certain realm.
I like that. Yeah, I'm big on some structure. You can go off the map sometimes, but I like typical song structure, because just so many times you see bands and I'm like, what are they even doing? I can't decipher one riff. I can't tell you a riff that repeated. I can't tell you one memorable part. So when a band just if a band just has decent song structure, I'm willing to give them a lot more leeway than someone that's just doing stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. Because you feel like you were not attacked by the music. It's like, oh, I understood it, So even if it's complicated music, because even in math rock or something like that, so many math rock bands, like, all right, that's clearly the verse and that's clearly their chorus, but it's still so complicated, So it's funny to watch.
So what do we have coming up for Def Club? We have the new LP that's coming out. That'll be out. Wait, when does it come out?
September 19th.
Okay, so the new LP will be out September 19th. That's coming up soon. What else? Do we have any tours planned? Do we have any shows planned? Is there anything else you can tell us?
We do. We have a show August 23rd in Long Beach at Supply and Demand. That's the only one that I could share, but we do have a tour in November and then a couple of dates in December coming as well, but they just haven't been announced yet. But those are really good bands, really big bands, friends of ours. So it'll be fun. And then I think we're trying to do hopefully Europe, hopefully Mexico, and we all really want to go to Japan. So that'd be phenomenal.
Oh yeah, everybody wants to go there. That's the band dream.
Yeah, I played there. I played Japan, South Korea, China, and that was just a rad tour. great people. So I think Def Club would really like to do that and sort of experience that together. Justin loves Japan as well. So I just think it'd be really cool and different for us. Obviously we did Europe. So we're waiting for European dates to see if we do a couple festivals out there and start plotting it out again. So it should be good.
Nice. How does it feel now to be in this band, a good band, and doing things and playing shows and touring? Because does it feel good? Because like there's been years where I've been inactive or trying to put something together and it's not working out, or in something and it's not the best. Like, how does this feel for you now to be doing all this?
It feels great. It feels different. It feels like maybe one of the first bands where there's a maturity to it, especially because Justin's been doing it for so long, and we're all very serious about it. We're all lifers, when it comes to this type of music, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to art punk, or so I think Justin just isn't a person that wastes his time, and he's very meticulous about that. And I think Scott and I, again, as a drummer, he's never thought of like, oh, 'cause I'm a drummer, this is what I'm going to do, just as long as I can do it, and me being a weirdo and wanting to use my pedals and sounds. And unfortunately, Jason isn't going to be in the band anymore, just due to medical issues. So he can't tour. But we do have our buddy Colin from Sevende, who was fill-in bassist for the last couple of tours. So he's going to be our bassist now, full time. But I think we have a lot of love for each other as people. And when we're on tour, we have a lot of fun. So it's not like we've ever really hated it. It's just like, sometimes you can hate the situation. You can hate the oh man, we're in this weird place. And, like just dealing with emails and promoters and weird stuff, the technical things that maybe we're, as musicians, we don't like to do. But it's never something that we thought like, oh, we're going to quit next year, So it feels like it's a good band, a good solid band. And we listen to each other. So hopefully we're growing, as people.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great. I love the band. Make everybody out there, make sure you check out We Demand a Permanent State of Happiness. It will be out in September. I highly recommend it. And thank you. Thank you, Brian, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.